I had heard the rumors about Mercyvale Hospital long before I stepped foot inside its aging walls, tales of strange occurrences, whispered conversations between staff about Ward 13 being cursed, and the lingering sense of unease that seemed to permeate the entire building. But I was young and eager, fresh out of nursing school, and I brushed off the warnings as nothing more than superstition. My first night shift at Mercyvale was like stepping into a nightmare. The hospital felt like a relic of a bygone era, its corridors stretching out endlessly into darkness. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, and the air was heavy with the scent of antiseptic and decay. Assigned to Ward 13, I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that settled over me like a suffocating blanket. But as I made my rounds, the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The patients in Ward 13 were unlike any I had ever seen before. Their eyes held a haunted look, and their whispered pleas for help sent chills down my spine. I tried to reassure myself that it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. It was in room 1313 that I encountered true terror. The room was shrouded in darkness, the curtains drawn tightly shut to block out all light. As I approached the bed, a cold chill washed over me, freezing me in place. I could hear labored breathing emanating from the bed, rasping and ragged. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized the patient lying there was not breathing at all. His eyes were open, staring blankly into the void, and his skin was cold to the touch. With a strangled cry, I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling with fear. I felt a presence looming behind me, its icy breath sending shivers down my spine. With a final desperate effort, I fled the room, the echoes of my footsteps drowned out by the howling wind. As dawn broke over Mercyvale Hospital, I emerged from Ward 13, my hands trembling and my heart pounding in my chest. I tried to warn my colleagues of the horrors I had witnessed, but they dismissed me as delusional, chalking it up to exhaustion and stress. But I knew the truth. Ward 13 was not just a place of healing, but a gateway to the darkest depths of the human soul. And as long as it stood, it would continue to claim the lives of those who dared to venture within its cursed walls. Every night at St. Jude's Hospital, the halls seemed to come alive with whispered secrets and unseen presences. As a young nurse, I tried to dismiss the stories as mere superstition, but there was an undeniable chill that settled in my bones whenever I worked the graveyard shift. On one particularly eerie night, I found myself assigned to the abandoned wing of the hospital. The air was heavy with the scent of antiseptic and decay, and the flickering lights cast ominous shadows that danced along the walls. As I made my rounds, a sense of unease settled over me like a heavy blanket. The patients in the abandoned wing were long gone, their beds empty and their rooms shrouded in darkness. But there was a lingering presence that seemed to linger in the air, watching my every move. It was when I entered room 213 that I felt the first icy fingers of fear grip my heart. The room was unnaturally cold, despite the sweltering heat outside. The curtains fluttered in a non-existent breeze, and the faint sound of whispers echoed through the empty corridors. The patient in room 213, a young girl named Emily, lay motionless in her bed. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow and ragged. I approached her bedside cautiously, a sense of foreboding settling over me like a shroud. Suddenly, Emily's eyes snapped open, revealing depths of darkness that sent a shiver down my spine. Her gaze fixed on me with an intensity that chilled me to the core. "He's coming," she whispered, her voice barely more than a hoarse whisper. Before I could respond, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the room, extinguishing the flickering candle on the bedside table. In the darkness, I felt a presence looming over me, its icy touch sending a wave of terror coursing through my veins. With a strangled cry, I stumbled backwards, desperate to escape the room and the horrors within. But as I turned to flee, I was met with a sight that would haunt me for the rest of my days. Standing in the doorway was a figure cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It spoke no words, but its presence filled the room with a suffocating sense of dread. I fled St. Jude's Hospital that night, the echoes of my footsteps mingling with the whispers of the restless spirits that haunted its halls. And though I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the mind, I knew deep down that the horrors of St. Jude's were all too real. Night after night, as the moon cast its pale glow over the deserted corridors of Greenwood Memorial Hospital, I found myself drawn deeper into the mysteries that lurked within its walls. Each shift brought new tales of whispered secrets and unexplained phenomena. But it wasn't until one particular evening that I encountered something truly chilling. Assigned to the abandoned wing of the hospital, I navigated the dimly lit hallways with a sense of trepidation. The air was thick with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. As I made my rounds, a feeling of unease settled over me like a heavy fog. The patients in the abandoned wing were long gone, their beds empty and their rooms cloaked in darkness. Yet there was a presence that lingered, unseen but palpable, watching my every move. It was in room 314 that I first felt the chill of fear grip my heart. The room was colder than the rest, the air heavy with a sense of foreboding. I approached the bed cautiously, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. The patient in room 314, a middle-aged man named Mr. Thompson, lay motionless in his bed. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow and steady. I checked his vitals, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, a voice broke the silence, low and guttural. "Leave this place," it whispered, sending a shiver down my spine. I spun around, but the room was empty, save for Mr. Thompson and myself. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end as I searched the shadows for any sign of movement. With a trembling hand, I reached for the light switch, but before I could flick it on, the room was plunged into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my flashlight, its beam casting long, twisting shadows across the walls. In the dim light, I saw movement in the corner of the room. A figure, shrouded in darkness, lurked in the shadows, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. Heart pounding, I stumbled backwards, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I turned and fled from room 314, the echoes of my footsteps reverberating through the empty corridors. As I emerged into the safety of the main hospital wing, I knew that I would never forget the horrors I had witnessed that night. For in the depths of Greenwood Memorial Hospital, something ancient and malevolent lurked, waiting to ensnare anyone who dared to venture too close.